officers and members of the Asian Development Bank Institute, led by Dean Naoyuki Yoshino, who was a classmate of the Budget Secretary of the Philippines back in their college days. Other distinguished guests, honorable dignitaries, members of the academe, government officials, and economists from across Asia, and of course media from across Asia in the Pacific region, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Foremost, allow me to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the ADBI Institute for inviting me to be part of this significant event, the launching of the book, Financing Infrastructure in Asia and the Pacific, Capturing Impacts and New Sources. With the undeniable benefits of infrastructure development in propelling a country's economy, this book gives a detailed narration on how some of our neighboring Asian countries thrive and prosper due to infrastructure. This book is of particular interest to me and of course our economic team in our country because of the very ambitious infrastructure program that our country is embarked upon, wherein we intend to spend about 8 trillion pesos, or approximately $160 billion during the 6th-year term of our president in infrastructure projects, with the ultimate goal of plugging the infrastructure gap and fueling our GDP growth for the medium and long term. I therefore commend the minds behind the conception of this project and the efforts put to it by the researchers, writers, and editors, led by Dean Naoyuki Yoshino, ADB Institute Senior Economist and Co-Chair of the Research Department, Mr. Matthias Hebel, and ADB Institute Project Consultant, Mr. Umid Abid Hayef. So congratulations. And I'd like to start by speaking about the book itself. This book, which provides a thorough analysis on the impact of infrastructure in Asia, is a must-have for any country that seeks to fuel its economy through infrastructure. As presented a while ago, there is a chapter that provides empirical evidences measuring the effects of transport infrastructure in increasing the GDP and regional tax revenues of the country. And also, how companies and households benefit from infrastructure through increased total factor productivity and improved household income and education outcomes. Cross-border connectivity was also shown to intensify trade across Asia and the Pacific region. The chapter 3 of the book is dedicated to the highway effect on public finance, the case of the Southern Tagalog Arterial Road Tollway in the Philippines. What we call the Philippines as, we call it the Star Toll. As a deviation from the typical measurement of a project's impact by calculating the reduced travel time resulting to faster mobilization, the effect on the tax revenues of the cities and municipalities, along with the projects, were assessed. It turned out that the transportation infrastructure also plays a critical role in fueling business taxes, property taxes, and regulatory fees, not just in the cities and municipalities that it directly passes, but even in the nearby provinces. On the other hand, the impact of ports improvement on the education in the Philippines was chosen as a topic in chapter 6 of this book. The study was originally conceptualized to determine the effects of the roll-on, roll-off policy of the inter-island transport within our country. While it successfully revealed the positive results of the policy to the farm and non-farm agricultural household, a surprising effect on the attendance of school children was also revealed. This chapter also concludes that those near ro-ro ports have gained more leverage, suggesting that proximity to the infrastructure is beneficial. All these findings further bolster the premise that financing infrastructure can go a long way in economic development. And lastly, the book also reviews various options and modes for financing infrastructure. These, among others, are the impacts on the economy tackled in this book. The book is timely and relevant, for our region, Asia and the Pacific, has become the fastest growing area since 2002, with an increased share of global GDP from 25% in the year 2000 to 33% in 2016, and is expected to account for more than half, or 52%, of global production by 2050. To ensure that Asia and the Pacific continues on its growth trajectory, economies in the region have to address the issues of inequality, poverty, climate change, and infrastructure deficits in the region. ADB estimates that our region will need $26 trillion from 2016 to 2030. That's about $1.7 trillion a year, or 5 to 6% of the GDP for infrastructure investment in the Asia and Pacific region. The lack of reliable infrastructure in sound condition is a severe constraint in promoting economic and social development. And I can say this from personal experience in the Philippines, where historically we've never exceeded 3% of our GDP in spending. It's only now recently that we've ramped it up to 5 to 7%. This current condition and its ongoing trajectory goal to achieve socio-economic and infrastructure development still undergird the Philippines ADB partnership that has been in existence for over 50 years. Looking back, the Philippines ADB partnership has been mutually rewarding and productive. The ADB has been a reliable and responsive partner in mobilizing resources and providing technical support to help the Philippines meet the continuing and changing challenges of development. In the 1960s and 1970s, ADB helped build basic infrastructure for our young country. ADB started providing assistance in the form of grants and loans to the government of the Philippines through the Department of Public Works and Highways. With the country's crucial requirements on infrastructure in the early 70s for the development of Mindanao, which the government identified as a priority area. This included the Cotabato, General Santos, and Iligan, Cagayan de Oro, Butuan road networks, to name just two of several other projects. Following the economic crises of the 1980s and 90s, ADB support to the Philippines shifted to policy and program support when the country needed a funding boost. The support was later directed towards poverty reduction, social development, and policy assistance to boost growth from 1990s up to the first decade of the 21st century. This was when the ADB supported budget reforms through the Development Policy Support Program loan. With fiscal consolidation achieved by 2010, ADB's funding support shifted to assisting the government with private sector reforms through an integrated sector approach, including capital market reforms and promoting public-private partnerships in infrastructure. Pinatubo. Disaster response and resiliency is also an important component of the Philippines ADB partnership. Since the 1980s, ADB has been assisting the government in post-typhoon rehabilitation and restoration, providing loans, especially during major disasters such as the 1990 earthquake in northern Luzon and the 1991 Mount Pinatubo eruption. And in 2013, when one of the most powerful typhoons to make landfall in the Philippines, Typhoon Haiyan, also known as Yolanda, struck central Philippine provinces, ADB provided a financial assistance package of almost $900 million in the wake of Typhoon Yolanda. In terms of current Philippines ADB partnership, we have the ongoing implementation of the Road Improvement and Institutional Development Project that includes asset preservation and road improvement of about 340 kilometers of road network. It will assess the government of the Philippines in improving the financing of road infrastructure development, including road maintenance, and in addressing institutional capacity development needs to ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of sector operations and increase the sustainability of road infrastructure. We also have 2 recently approved ADB loans and 1 technical assistance grant. First, a sector loan for improving growth corridors in Mindanao Road Sector project that includes the road improvement of an estimated 275.35 kilometers of national, primary, secondary, and tertiary roads, and a 1,215 linear meter bridge in Mindanao. The project roads will be designed with features to strengthen resilience to climate change. Road safety on these roads will be improved through road safety community awareness campaigns. This project extends ADB's long-standing assistance in Mindanao with a recent focus on the road sector, including institutional development and now improving national roads for inclusive growth. Second is the recently approved Infrastructure Preparation and Innovation Facility, which includes project identification, planning stage, feasibility study, detailed engineering design, and preparation of procurement documents of the top priority and infrastructure projects under what we call the Build, Build, Build program. The IPIF aims to help the government make sound and objective investment decisions, prove robust project pipelines, and help fill the infrastructure gap of the country. The IPIF projects to be undertaken by the DPWH consists of 6 inter-island bridges, 1 road network, a tunnel, and 6 flood control projects. It should be noted also that these inter-island bridges are a first in the history of our country. They've never been done, and all these projects are of a scale that is unprecedented in our country's history. And lastly, is the proposed reconstruction and development plan for Greater Marawi. On May 23, 2017, the Islamic city of Marawi was occupied by members of the Islamic State-inspired Maute group. This resulted in a battle that lasted more than 100 days between the armed forces of the Philippines and this Maute group. While the Marawi siege was ongoing, many buildings were burned down or were bombed. Residents were also forced to evacuate, with approximately 84,600 individuals displaced. After the liberation of Marawi on October 17, 2017, the government assessed the damages and losses to determine the needs to restore the living conditions for all Marawi residents. The goal of the government in restoring Marawi is to bring back and build back an even better and greater Marawi. The objective of the restoration project is to develop the peripheral areas surrounding Marawi City through the construction of a 19.9-kilometer ring road that will traverse the surrounding areas of Marawi City. Also, the rehabilitation and development of a 45.26-kilometer transcentral road links, construction of schools, hospitals, public markets, and house of worship, development of a water supply system, and construction of a Malabang viaduct. Now, in terms of our country, the Philippine economy, as you can see, continues to enjoy strong and consistent growth, hitting a 6.6% GDP growth in the last quarter of 2017, and thus reaching a GDP growth rate of 6.7% for the full year of 2017. Thus, the Philippines remains one of the fastest growing economies in Asia after China and Vietnam. We move forward in 2018 with an even stronger determination to boost our GDP to 7 to 8%. The Philippine government recently achieved a breakthrough economic reform that will boost government resources. Before 2017 ended, we passed the first package of our tax reforms, and we have 4 more major reforms underway. These reforms will expand our fiscal space, increase our revenues for infrastructure, while keeping the business climate very healthy. The first package alone will increase revenues by a hefty $1.5 billion. It should be also noted that this, what we call the trade, this new tax reform package, is also unprecedented in our country's history. And it's a reflection of the political will of this administration. Our sound fiscal management and good governance have led to better opportunities, such as access to the lower cost of financing. Our country's sovereign credit default swap spreads has been at a record low, while our credit ratings tremendously improved since 2010. These indicate investors' views of government debt paper as safer investments than before. As we continue to prioritize sustainability and poverty reduction, the Philippines stays strongly committed to the 2030 agenda of the United Nations. The government ensures that the Sustainable Development Goals are factored into the Philippine Development Plan for 2017 and 2022, and in the National Long-Term Vision, or which we can call our ambition, or Ambisyon Natin 2040. In our efforts to work towards these goals, the Philippine Development Plan lays out strategies to further the government's development agenda. The PDP fleshes out the President's 0+10 socio-economic agenda, taking into account the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and lays the foundation for Philippines' shared vision of a life that is what we call matatag, maginhawa, panatag, or in English, strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure life. Under the Duterte administration, the Philippines will show off its biggest and boldest and most ambitious infrastructure program so far. In 2017, the government budgeted approximately 5.4% of our GDP, which is more than twice. You can see twice the average GDP growth for the past 6 administrations. So you can see what a significant difference that is. And we are ramping that 5.4% up to 7% before the end of the term of this administration. The government will spend around 8 trillion pesos, or approximately 160 billion US dollars, in infrastructure projects to usher in what we call the golden age of infrastructure in the Philippines. Our railway system. Currently, the Philippines has only 77 kilometers of railway in the country, the whole country. We want to increase that to 2,466 kilometers of rail in the islands of Luzon and Mindanao, benefiting around 4 million passengers per day. The construction for PNR Clark, the line from Manila to the former airbase, is already underway. Next up is the PNR line, Philippine National Railway line, that stretches from Manila all the way to Bicol and Sorsogon in the south. Bicol and Sorsogon are the southernmost provinces of the Philippines, of Luzon, of the island of Luzon. We will revive the PNR because that is Metro Manila's link to the rest of Luzon. For the first time, we will build a railway system outside of Luzon. The Mindanao Railway project is a priority project of this government, and the first segment has already received initial funding from Congress. When it comes to airports, construction of 2 airports will be completed this year. First is the new world-class and resort-themed terminal at Mactan Cebu International Airport. This is the largest city in the Visayas Island, which is one of the 3 major islands in our country. Also, next is the new Bohol Airport in the island paradise of Panglao, which will be the country's first eco airport. We are planning we are going to use solar panels and also utilize the highest standards of green and sustainable infrastructure. In our ports, we are also improving and modernizing our ports nationwide. We want more roll-on, roll-off facilities in our ports because that is still the main mode of transport for a majority of our people, especially our local traders. What we see here is what we call the Luzon Spine Expressway Network. Based on a JICA study, the Philippines loses approximately 3.5 billion pesos or $70 million daily from traffic congestion, which is why traffic decongestion is one of the major components of our infrastructure program. Our government is targeting to construct 655 kilometers of high-standard highways, expressways in Luzon, which is about twice the 385 kilometers of existing expressway. Once completed, travel time from one of the northernmost provinces, one of the northernmost provinces in Luzon to the southernmost province will be reduced from 19 hours and 40 minutes to only 8 hours and 15 minutes. Thank you. In addition to the 30 existing bridges crossing the Pasig River, which is the main river which goes through Metro Manila, the capital of the Philippines, and this caters to about 1.3 million. The existing bridges across Pasig River cater to about 1.3 million vehicles daily. In addition to this, 12 new bridges will be constructed to provide alternative linkages between our major thoroughfares and increase the number of usable roadways. And this is a major component of our plan to decongest Metro Manila. But we don't want to limit it just to Metro Manila. Of course, we want to make sure that this development reaches all the islands. So, which is one of the reasons why we've conceptualized this inter-island link bridge project. And as you can see, in all major islands, we are already doing the feasibility study, and some of these bridges are already at an advanced stage of procurement. We will construct in 2018. An example of this is we will construct this year the 3.7 kilometer Pangil Bay Bridge that will connect a major city in Mindanao called Tangum and to the municipality of Tubol in Lanao del Norte. These are two major cities in Mindanao. To date, the longest bridge that we built in the Philippines is 2 kilometers long, and this was built during the time of President Marcos. I mentioned earlier there were some bridges at advanced stage of procurement. One of these is the Panay-Guimaras-Negros Link Bridge. This is connecting 2 major islands in the Visayas region. It is by far is one of our flagship projects in the Department of Public Works and Highways. By far the longest bridge that we've ever built at a length of 19.2 kilometers. We have what we call New Clark City, which is a former U.S. air base converted into a major urban center. Clark is on its way to becoming Asia's next, what we want to be the next aerotropolis, with the development not only of the airport, but also of the Clark Freeport, and the construction of the first smart, green, and resilient New Clark City. It is envisioned to be a place of convergence for government, business, communities, institution, innovation hubs, among others. These are only some of the major, this is just a taste, and these are only some of the major infrastructure projects under the Build program of President Duterte, and we believe that these projects will increase economic growth and connectivity in our country and also ultimately in the region. Now to talk about financing of these major infrastructure programs. In financing our massive infrastructure initiative, our main commitment is to deliver projects with speed and of the highest quality under the principle of sustainable fiscal management. The decision on how to finance our program will be prudently done on a project-to-project basis, taking into account the cost of financing, the time it takes to implement, whole-of-life project cost, as well as the value for money. The government is thus exploring a multitude of financing options. First, part of the incremental revenues generated from the newly enacted Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Act, or TRAIN Act, will provide the government capital to finance about a quarter of the funding requirements for its Build program. Second, proposals for public-private partnerships to implement the infrastructure projects are also being considered. In fact, this government has welcomed submissions of unsolicited public-private partnership proposals, as they require no direct government guarantee, and they urge the private sector to become more involved in this infrastructure program. In the previous administrations, unsolicited proposals were not considered a priority and were generally not entertained. And that's a major difference under the Duterte administration, as we are openly accepting and vetting these unsolicited proposals. And in considering these unsolicited PPP projects, the government will look at the innovation they introduce and their priority to the public sector projects. Not only does this invite private sector efficiency, but it also minimizes the risk of contingent liabilities, hence putting less pressure in the government's fiscal space. Third, the government will also be tapping ODA, or Official Development Assistance, from its development partners such as Japan, China, of course ADBI, taking advantage of the concessional loans these partners are providing. Aside from the favorable concessional financing terms with the long-term maturities, ODA allows the government to have access to a wider range of knowledge, technology, and experience through competitive, transparent procurement. And of course, complementing and building on national available expertise, as well as ensuring that there is a knowledge and technology transfer. Also providing for careful project feasibility analyses through rigorous and transparent project appraisal process. The government is also ensuring that infrastructure projects are partnered with DPs based on their source country's comparative advantage in terms of technology, expertise, and knowledge. Japan and China are now among the Philippines' closest bilateral partners in our infrastructure development, with both countries delivering swiftly on their respective pledges. In 2017, China has so far committed an estimated $8.68 billion in soft loans and grants to the Philippines. Japan has pledged a total of $11 billion. Just last month, JICA and the Philippine government has signed a loan agreement for the first tranche loan for the Metro Manila Subway Phase 1. The first tranche amounts to a massive $935 million. This project is probably one of the largest and one of the crown jewels of the Build, Build, Build program of this administration. ADB is also supporting the government to create an environment conducive to private infrastructure investment. For example, the recently approved Capital Market Reforms Program loan is a manifestation of ADB's support for the country's efforts in implementing reform measures aimed at accelerating investment in infrastructure, including private investments, by establishing a framework through which private funding can be channeled. Major accomplishments under this program include the launch of a modern, off-the-shelf national registry of scriptless securities, the Government Securities Repo Program, and the Enhanced Government Securities Eligible Dealers Program, launching of the Personal Equity and Retirement Account, and the issuance of a code of government governance, corporate governance for publicly listed companies, among others. Another example is the expanding private participation in infrastructure program loan. Aligned with the government's strategy to increase private investment in infrastructure through PPP policy reforms, this program has strengthened government financial support to PPPs, expanded and efficiently implemented pipeline of PPP projects, and strengthened the legal and regulatory framework of our public-private partnerships. Ensuring good quality at entry, implementation, and operation and maintenance. To achieve the Philippine golden age of infrastructure under the government's BBB program, the government has to ensure good quality of infrastructure projects, implementation during operation and maintenance. Infrastructure projects are often not delivered as planned due to either poor project implementation or poor project formulation. The government is taking significant steps to increase implementation readiness of the proposed infrastructure programs and projects and to strengthen the absorptive capacities of all our implementing agencies. With the ADB's help, the government has developed the IPIF, or the Infrastructure Preparation and Innovation Facility. This was created to support key agencies, the DPWH, the Department of Transportation, to jumpstart big-ticket infrastructure projects by conducting pre-investment activities that will help accelerate their approval process while ensuring timely, high-quality procurement and implementation. IPIF was also conceptualized to fully leverage the pool of funds from local and foreign sources and materialize the goals of infrastructure investment. The government has also received a $5 million technical assistance grant from ADB to assist the government in pushing forward its BBB agenda by ensuring timely capacity building of the key implementing agencies responsible for national infrastructure projects, as well as developing an infrastructure project monitoring and management system. The government has also established a project facilitation, monitoring, and innovation task force to facilitate the development, approval, and implementation of flagship infrastructure projects. The task force will institute policies and processes to address issues and bottlenecks on the project cycle of the infrastructure flagship projects. And finally, in choosing what mode to use to finance a project, it is not just a choice among government funds, ODA, or PPP. The government takes into consideration all options, such as financing through what we call a hybrid scheme, which we did in the US $240 million expansion of the Clark International Airport. This solved the issue of delays, which was prevalent in the previous administration's PPP program. Before, PPP projects on average took approximately 30 months before construction could start. Through the hybrid scheme, the Clark International Airport only took 7 months from approval in May of 2017 until its groundbreaking. The operation and maintenance component is rapidly underway, as public bidding will be held before the end of the second quarter this year. The government is still looking for other ways to improve the delivery of its infrastructure program to be better and faster. And looking to the future, we see a complex development landscape given the pressures from a rapidly from rapidly changing technologies, urbanization, climate change, and conflict-driven extremism in some parts of the world. The Philippines has elevated vulnerability to these via high BPO, overseas Filipino workers, and exports dependency, exposure to natural disasters, and historically unresolved conflicts in our southern island of Mindanao. ADB continues to support our nationwide rollout of the government's flagship Jumpstart Philippines program, providing out-of-school youths with a full cycle of employment services and other labor activation programs. We are pleased and encouraged that the board and management of ADB are embarking on a process of planning for the future of Asia and the Pacific, forging ahead with a new vision and strategy to continuously remain relevant, stronger, better, and faster. In the face of rapid technological progress that offers both opportunities and challenges in terms of job losses, increased inequality, and social disruption, we look to the ADB to continually strengthen and share its expertise and knowledge and help the Philippines and other countries reap the promise of disruptive technologies and navigate through its hazards to help future-proof our economy and make it more connected in technology and infrastructure, resilient to climate change and technological disruption, and inclusive in globalization. The authors of the book, Financing Infrastructure in Asia and the Pacific, Impacts on New Sources, hope to help policymakers in Asia and the Pacific region formulate evidence-based infrastructure policies that lead to stable and sustained economic growth. This goal, I believe, is attainable with the ADB partnership with Asian countries hand in hand. And we are grateful for this book's great contribution to the future growth of the economies of the Asian Pacific. May we always work hand in hand towards the upliftment of all of us. Again, we have a saying in the Philippines, we say, to life. And we say, mabuhay. So I'd like to just, as my final word to all of you, thank you very much. It was an honor to be here. Congratulations on this very helpful book. So, to life for you all, or mabuhay kayong lahat. Maraming salamat.